You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find
You
it.
can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you.
Ooh.
Find your next ride at Autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
A filing cabinet with only one file. Josh had always been perplexed by this. Of all the filing cabinets in the office of Dops, each one seemed packed past the point of bursting. Except for one. The one tucked away in the corner of Dr. Samuel's office, closest to his desk. The one with one file, labeled Grayson Willett. Dr. Samuels was a very open person to work for, and with. There were no deep, dark, hidden secrets. There couldn't be if they were going to find answers to seemingly impossible questions. So when Dr. Samuels asked Josh if he could go find a case file named Alexander Hughes, Josh didn't know where to start. It was his first week, and when Dr. Samuels said it was in the bottom drawer of a file cabinet near his desk, that didn't really specify anything. Dops had about 700 cases at this point, back in 1996. His first attempt to locate Alexander Hughes was the tiny filing cabinet, and then he saw it. The one file, labeled Grayson Willett. He didn't ask about it then. In fact, it would have been quite some time until he brought it up. Instead, he eventually found the file for Alexander Hughes, a 4-year-old child who had told his grandparents that he had been killed in a jungle by men with knives. The description of his death was eerily similar to what American soldiers detailed in the description of guerrilla warfare during Vietnam. Where did Alexander's memories come from? That was at the forefront of Josh's mind. It was not, who was Grayson Willett? And why does he have his own filing cabinet? It would be nearly 2 years until Josh asked Dr. Samuels about that one isolated file. Kathleen's theory was that it was someone very close to Samuels, either a relative or a friend. Why else would it be isolated, yet so easily accessible? She would ask Josh about it every couple of months. The intrigue was chomping at her bit. Josh would tell her that he didn't feel comfortable, yet. Just ask him, Kathleen would say. The cabinet wasn't locked. Samuel seems like an open book. A new beer garden had just opened in town. The year was 1999. Dops had 5 employees by now, thanks to another private donation by multimillionaire Cameron Stone. Josh, Dr. Samuels, Martha, and 2 research associates, both named Shannon, were out enjoying the fresh spring weather when Josh caught a surge of adrenaline. Maybe it was the delicious IPA, or the weather, or the communal feeling of Dops. Whatever it was, he asked his boss, "Who was Grayson Willett?" "Grayson was my first proper colleague," Samuels told him. "A brilliant research associate from the Midwest. It's sort of amazing he found Dops at all. My first book had miraculously made its way to his hometown library. How that happened and whom I can thank for discovering my work continues to be a mystery. But Grayson was a very intellectually curious man. I believe the fascination with reincarnation started at a young age. His parents wanted him to be a physician, but he had to go against their best wishes and pursue psychology, which eventually led him to me, and our first work. First one in, last one out. That was his level of work ethic. We would not be here without him, I can assure you that." Josh knew that wasn't true. Samuels was the heartbeat of Dops. Even from the grave, Dops lived and breathed because of Samuels. But he knew Samuels would never accept that kind of flattery, so he let him continue on with the story. "We had one case, Martin Taylor, which you know about." "I do," Josh told him. "Everyone knows about Martin Taylor." "I suppose you're right," Samuels told him. "Well, we had met with Martin briefly once already, and we had been scheduled to meet with him a second time. This time, it would be just me and Martin. This was by far our most, and I hate to use this word, but marketable case. We knew this was going to get some clout. The papers couldn't get enough of this story. As you know, Eileen had fallen that morning. She was in rough shape, so I asked Grayson to go for me. He said he would, being the great colleague that he was. I called Martha that afternoon to check in, and she says, well, Grayson called, and he quit. Samuels mimicked having a heart attack by clutching his chest. Josh, I did a quadruple take. First of all, the guilt I felt. What had happened? So I went to his house, apartment. He lived not too far from the university. To say he was not materialistic is an understatement. So I knock on the door, and there's no answer. But his bicycle was outside, so I knew he was there. I tried knocking a couple of times. Eventually, after 5 rounds of knocks and some pleading through the windows to please talk to me, the door finally opens. I went inside, and Grayson told me what happened. Samuels finished his beer. There was a quarter of it left, and Samuels was not a heavy drinker. Josh was taken aback by Samuels appearing nervous, which was a rare sight to behold. What he said could not be verified. The recorder that he used malfunctioned, so the conversation between him and Martin is not on record, anywhere. And there was a brief power outage in the hospital. The lights inside the room went out, so Detective Marbury and Dr. Donner, who had been working on the case with us, could not see through the window. All we have is Grayson's word, which to me speaks as highly as the truth. According to him, a presence emerged in the room, which sounds exactly like Grayson's father, who had passed away a week before. I didn't know about Grayson's father. Not that I'm surprised, Grayson was a fairly private person. But I can tell you, without a shred of doubt, that if Grayson said a presence emerged in the room, I take him at his word. Josh was entranced. He couldn't believe it. This was the closest thing he had countered to a real-life ghost story. He had to know more. So the presence, his father, what did it say? Grayson never told me. All he said that it was his father's voice. As soon as he heard it, he ran out of the room. Marbury and Donner tried to calm him down, have him walk them through exactly what happened, what had been said, but he never told them, never told me. As far as I know, he's never told anyone. Josh's jaw was bouncing off the beer garden wooden tables. How long was Grayson in the room with Martin Taylor? 2 minutes and 37 seconds. That's how long the recording of White Static lasted. Josh was in awe, disgusted with himself for not asking about it sooner, although the length of that time had only magnified the intensity of the reveal. Like a magic trick with a setup that captivates and paralyzes the audience all at once. Josh now had a new #1 case to be obsessed with, the one of Grayson Willett. Brendan was rarely in the office. After COVID, most of his work became remote. He had 2 small children, and being able to work from home provided to be extremely beneficial for him and his family. He made himself readily available for the weekly Monday morning Zoom sessions in which the DOPS team would give updates on all open case files and their status. When the clock struck 2025, Brendan had become the team member who conducted most of the in-person interviews. Samuels was no longer around. Josh was getting up there in age, and Courtney was still a bit too new. That left Brendan, the presumed heir, once Josh called it quits. Brendan, nice to see you. Hi, Maggie, how are you? Brendan and Maggie, the administrative coordinator, exchanged pleasantries. It had been some time since they'd seen each other in person. Maggie was 35. She had gotten the position thanks to her aunt, Martha. Dr. Samuels was thrilled to hire within Martha's family when searching for Martha's replacement. What a perfect fit, everyone thought. She had Martha's warm, embracing personality, as well as her commitment to discretion. On top of everything else, she had also played for the North Carolina Tar Heels women's volleyball team, which meant at least once or twice per month the DOPS team would gather together to watch the most recent UNC sporting event. It was the perfect casual get-together. Courtney had taken up residence at Brendan's desk with a blessing. Seeing as how he was never there, and she needed a proper office and not a shared space with Maggie, it had made sense to everyone. Brendan always felt a wave of nostalgia when he would come back in person. He had not seen Josh since Kathleen's funeral, and it made him question whether or not he should be there for more. For Josh, for the team, time is fleeting after all. His hands were always full, literally and metaphorically, and today was no exception. Courtney had briefed him on the Olive case. The plan was to do an in-person interview today. They had only spoken on the phone to Olive's mother, Kristen. Brendan would drive and Courtney would lead the interview. She had never led before. You can imagine her excitement when Brendan made the proposition, which she jumped on before his question reached the question mark. At that time, it was unknown whether Josh would accompany them or not. Kathleen had died the week before, and they agreed not to ask him. It was best to let him grieve however he saw fit. As far as Brendan was concerned, Josh had no idea who Olive was. Part of Brendan was excited by this. As much as he treasured Josh's mentorship, he knew that at some point soon, he would be running the show, which meant not being able to lean on Josh for guidance. Perhaps it was best for him and Dops as a whole for Josh not to be involved. Think of it as a practice run, he told himself. Life without Dr. Tucker. There was something else about this specific case that really excited Brendan. He couldn't put his finger on it, which made him even more intrigued. A 3-year-old girl with vivid memories of her son being murdered. He had the case file in front of him. He was killing time at the office by looking it over, and over, and over. The aspect about little Olive that really drew Brendan in was her ability to completely disregard her previous life once she had told her mother about it. Most of the cases he had been part of, the children had become attached to their previous life. The length of the attachment never stretched too long. This was an overarching part of their research. Why children seemed to forget about their past lives by the time they were 7 years old. But little Olive, she became someone else for the span of 20 minutes and then stopped. That was new. That was, dare he say, exciting. Brendan, more so than his colleagues, was particularly attached to the concept of possession. It was a controversial subject to say the least. The stigma attached to possession was strong enough to dissuade any researcher or professor away from offering it up as a potential solution. You associate the word with horror movies, like The Exorcist, or the hundreds of Exorcist ripoffs that have occurred since the film came out back in 1971. One of Brendan's first questions to Olive's mother was about movies. Had the child somehow gained access to a horror film? Was she just acting out what she had seen on screen? Impossible, the mother Kristen told Brendan over the phone. We have parental controls on everything. We run a pretty tight ship. My husband is somewhat paranoid about that, because his brother had some mental issues that may have stemmed from exposure to... She didn't finish that thought. Brendan highlighted in big bold letters to make her finish that thought at a later date. I suppose you could never say impossible, Kristen continued. But if I could offer up any sort of rational explanation for what happened to my daughter, I would, because that would help me sleep at night. Right now, all I can do is toss and turn trying to find an answer. I'm at a loss. Brendan checked his watch, and then his phone. He had agreed to meet Courtney at the office by 10. It was now 10:15. Courtney was always on time. In fact, she was always early. He sent her a text telling her that he was there. Waynesville was a 3-hour drive. They had told Kristen to expect a 3 p.m. arrival. Part of their travel plans involved stopping somewhere for coffee to go over the presentation of questioning, so they still had ample time to get there as expected. It also let Brendan's mind wander alone for a little longer, which he always enjoyed. It allowed him the opportunity to ponder possession. It had never been proven, far from it. Call it a gut feeling, a hunch, whatever word makes sense, but there was something about Olive that told him possession was a possible explanation. Why don't people want to know? That was the question on Courtney's mind while they waited at the stoplight. Josh was sitting in shotgun. He seemed nervous, much more than usual. He had downloaded a calm demeanor from his mentor, Dr. Samuels, which Courtney appreciated, since she had always considered herself to be fairly anxious. Her question had been one that everyone who had ever worked for Dops asked at some point or another. There was not one answer. Far from it. Circumstance of upbringing, I suppose. That was Dr. Samuel's answer when Josh asked back in 2002. It was a pretty broad response in the eyes of anyone who heard it, whether it be Martha, Josh, Grayson, Courtney, or everyone else who had worked at Dops. The first person who asked Josh that very question was Brendan Whitmore. It was during his initial interview. Josh and Samuels were impressed that this young man had asked him something. The interviewer never becomes the interviewee. But he seemed so sincere in his question. Samuels opened his mouth before pausing and then turned to his colleague, Josh, allowing him to give his own response. the first glimpse at what life might look like at Dops without Samuels there to do the answering. "Well," Josh said before continuing, "I suppose it's better not to know, for most people." "And for Dops?" Brendan asked. Again, Samuels let Josh do the talking. "We want to know," Josh said. "We want to know everything." That was back in 2009. Now he was being asked again, 16 years later, in a world with no Samuels and no Kathleen. "Well," Josh said before continuing, "I suppose it's... What do you think, Courtney?" Courtney sunk into her seat a bit, staring at the somehow still red stoplight. "I wish I knew," she said. "Sometimes I think I made all of this." Josh turned to her. There was something so familiar about her words, her presence. She continued speaking as Josh felt transported. It wasn't déjà vu, it was something more, something bigger. He could see it as she spoke. "There was nothing before me. There will be nothing after me. I've lived my entire life trying to collect facts, and the only answers that seem to make sense is that it's all about me. People spend so much time not wanting to know. Maybe that's why I spend so much time alone. Because I can't understand them, but I want to. That's why I'm here. That's why I do the work. I want to understand them. It's as if we're all just sitting at this big stoplight, waiting for a signal. And then the color of the light changes, and we all go on with our lives in different directions, even though we all have the same destination." She turned to Josh and asked him, "Is that crazy?" Josh shook his head. Then he turned it towards his window, trying not to let her see that his eyes were watering. For reasons he could not understand, maybe it was a buildup of losing Kathleen, of losing Samuels, of losing relevance, the thought of Brendan Whitmore only reiterated the fact that it was only a short matter of time before he took over Dops and then Josh would be retired, milling about his home, alone. Samuels made it 6 months. How long would Josh last? What would he do in his final time on this earth? This earth which had shrunken in size over the past year, from infinite to microscopic. "No," Josh told her, "you're not crazy. You're not alone, Courtney." She turned to Josh, and he told her, "We're all connected by the things that we don't understand." The light turned green. It was time to meet Martin Taylor.
Ark Raiders, a multiplayer extraction adventure video game set in a lethal yet vibrant future Earth. Play as a raider, where you will settle into a fractured underground settlement, hoping to build a new home and legacy for yourself. In order to thrive, you must return to the surface, where lethal Ark machines roam unchecked and the motives of other raiders are dangerously unclear. But if you are fearless enough, who knows what you might find? Pre-order now for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, and PC. Available on October 30. Rated T for Teen.